Today on Locked On Rockies, the trade deadline has come and passed. The Rockies don't make any last-second big moves, but it doesn't matter because they made the right moves. Are they the right moves? Let's talk about the Rockies active at the trade deadline right now.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the first day of August, the first podcast post-trade deadline for the Colorado Rockies. This is your home for Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. If your team is the Colorado Rockies, you're in the right spot because that's what we do around here, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk here on your favorite streaming services and, of course, on our friends platform, Sirius XM, where you can find Locked On Rockies and all your play-by-play coverage of the Colorado Rockies. I'm your Rockies fan extraordinaire, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk. Been covering this team for about 3 seasons now and been a passionate Rockies fan my entire life. Today on the show, of course, what are we going to talk about? Trades. Nothing really new necessarily for the Rockies other than the Brad Hand trade today. But we're going to talk about the fact that the Rockies turned 4 veteran players into 6 pitchers, including some prospects. They also did make a trade with LA to bring in another pitcher. Was that the right move? Did the Rockies only need to focus on pitching? We'll dive into that and more on the trades. We'll also, of course, talk about yet another wacky ball game between the Colorado Rockies and the San Diego Padres. Before we dive into everything today, though, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So, here it is. We got confirmation. This will be a little bit later after the deadline. I know the episode's a little later than normal, but I wanted to make sure just in case that nothing broke. It's not like the Rockies were going to make much of a seismic trade, a Rymack, a Brendan Rodgers trade. I don't think that was ever necessarily considered for the Rockies, but almost all of the players that I thought were going to be dealt for the Rockies were dealt, and they were able to get, a pretty decent haul. Listen, it's not going to be the flashy. These Rockies players in the performance wasn't going to get the best prospects. But the Rockies, off of trading 4 players away, they bring in 6 pitching prospects. We read from Kelsey Winger here. The Rockies have gotten, so in those pitchers, which are now, let's see here. Right-handed pitcher Connor Van Sokic, right-handed pitcher Victor Vodic, which we'll dive into rankings here in a second. Tanner Gordon, Jake Madden, Mason Albright, and Alec Barger. Out of all of those trades, 4 out of the 6 are starting pitchers. 2 relief pitchers in Vodic and Barger. But then let's fine tune a little bit more here. Out of those 6 prospects, 4 of them are in the top 30 of their projected or of their former franchises, and 2 of them ended up in the top 10. The Rockies were able to go out and get 2 top 10 prospects from farm systems. That's a solid return. I think, again, we're going to have to see necessarily how much this pans out, but this is the type of move, the right types of moves for the Rockies to make, and maybe even a fact that you can sit there and say that they got some solid value. I mean, 4 starting pitching prospects is you need 2 to fully pan out. Because who knows what the other day might be able to be a bullpen, long relief. There's a whole sort of ways you can go. But this is a rebuild. This is retooling. This is adding depth. The most frustrating part about this, honestly, is just still getting caught up in the past. But maybe that's not the mindset to look at anymore. I mean, I can't think of a trade deadline really ever or as recent where the Rockies were this active. I mean, this is multiple deals. You even go to Mike Moustakas there earlier. Pierce Johnson. The Rockies have traded Moustakas, Pierce Johnson, CJ Cron, Randall Grichuk, Brad Hand as well. That's smart moves. Personally, I think I think this would also trickle into more of the performance of the player, and I'm curious to see maybe what will. I think if the Rockies could have moved Profar, that would have been nice just to move on from another person. I don't think Profar is going to factor into this Rockies team in the long haul, and teams might be necessarily looking for. Profar hasn't done enough on defense or offense to really make him as enticing, because you're looking at the people that the Rockies have traded, and all of them have had moments of success and are can help fill gaps. I mean, that Angels team might really be getting some of the sleeper players. I mean, I don't necessarily, like I mentioned on our initial thing, initial reaction to the Cron and Grichuk trade, that they're not going to make the Angels immediate contenders. But look what happened yesterday. These are players that are having immediate impacts on rosters, and that's the beauty of the deadline. That's the benefit, which isn't a great word to use, I guess, of being a bad team that's active at the trade deadline, is there are teams out there that want to get the production potential of these players. Cron and Grichuk and Moose have to obviously do more than just have one big exciting game, but there's a reason why these players generate the interest, and now you can feel so much better because you want to root for those guys and let them do it. But instead of watching them, what would have the point of CJ Cron having a monster August for the Colorado Rockies be? There wasn't any. There simply, plain and simple, was no reason for CJ Cron to have a strong finish to the season in purple. Same with Randall Grichuk. These players aren't factoring into the big picture. And the best part, I think, the thing that I was a little worrisome about the trades to start was the fact that it was kind of 1-for-1 and things of that nature, and it ended up being close to that. The Rockies really didn't get enough, but they were able to bring in more players than they traded away. And I'm really encouraged by the fact that that they do rank there. Now, prospect rankings aren't necessarily the best way to look at these, to break these down, to really fully analyze these deals, but it's depth building of pitching. At the end of the day, we can see where these guys will pan out. We got time to figure out where these players are going to go. But unlike John Gray, the Rockies are getting something back in return. Unlike losing, a Trevor Story, a Carlos Estevez, John Gray, these other players that have walked in free agency or have gone elsewhere, the Rockies are bringing in a pretty significant, or at least impactful, haul where they're able to go out and see what they can do. I mean, the best part is it addressed pitching depth. And how good can these guys be? We'll see. How will the Rockies develop? We'll see. But right here in the here and now, the immediate impact is this was the way to handle it. Because you saw it last night as well. And we haven't even talked about the fact that the Rockies are getting two big names back, maybe three, but Charlie Blackmon, a little bit of a snag. But we're getting to see glimpses. At least last night was the first big glimpse of who the Rockies are thinking they're going to be and who they're going to turn to, at least on the position player side, for the next couple of years. And when you look at the lineup there yesterday, the exception, of course, being Rogers not being the DH and playing second base instead of him being, but of course, that's the rehab thing. But that is these are the benefits of selling at the deadline. Replenishing, adding pitching depth into your depleted farm system of pitching, and freeing up and opening up the opportunities for two players that need to be playing every day for the rest of the season, in Alaris Montero and Michael Toglia. Those two guys now have the opportunity, now have more of a chance to really show us who they can be. And now, hopefully, the Rockies are finally going to give Alaris Montero the chance to break out and be himself. It's a little too late in this season, but if he can get 50 solid games, if he can get over 100 at-bats, if he can get more time against Major League pitching, which is what he desperately needs, all solid moves for the Rockies. Even if these guys don't pan out, this was how you handle the trade deadline. This is how you especially in a weird kind of market where teams might have been hesitant to go, where the true value of these players was kind of murky, especially with the Rockies. I'm not going to sit here and say that the Rockies messed up here. Now, the one question I think we do need to ask as we're approaching and retooling and rebuilding depth, did the Rockies focus too much on pitching? Let's talk about that coming up here in segment number 2. Before we do that, though, buying tickets to your favorite event shouldn't be stressful. And I told you about my experience here using Gametime for the All-Star game. Game Time's got you covered when you need last-second deals on all the big-time events. Maybe you were like me, you didn't buy a ticket at the beginning, and then you went down and you saw how much fun everyone was having at the All-Star game and heading in there, and you say, you know what, get me a ticket. Game Time's got you covered. Not only that, they got flash deals that you can check out there up to the last second, basically. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find the same tickets in the same section and rows for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast, free and streaming on your favorite streaming service. Hey, we hit our 500 subscribers on YouTube. I'm working on the giveaway stuff, so that'll come later on, but I promise you folks, I haven't forgotten about it, especially because, man, the support of the show this season, folks, has been honestly incredible. I mean, in a weird season for the Rockies fans have turned up to the Locked On Rockies podcast, and I want to give a shout-outs to y'all for making us your first listen of the day, and for all my everydayers out there. No, we haven't been live as much in the past, but things just kind of come and change and stuff, so I'm kind of focused on making sure I get bringing you the best podcast possible here for us Rockies fans here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you again for making us your first listen of the day. Hey, check us out on SiriusXM and the SiriusXM app as well. That's where you can also find your play-by-play action of the Colorado Rockies. Just search Locked On Rockies or Colorado Rockies. Now, here's a question I was kind of thinking about. Did the Rockies buy too much into... Should the Rockies have looked for other positions other than pitching when it came to these trades, when it came to these moves? And flat out, I think the answer is no. Here's the deal. Trade deadlines going forward, trading in general, the Rockies have to get creative about bringing pitching talent to Colorado. And the best way to do it is going to be via the trade. Teams with no trade clauses are almost always going to collude in Colorado, I bet you, when it comes to pitchers. So that will make it difficult. But the Rockies have enough interesting prospects across other positions, including young, depending on how you use that word, or low, or guys that they're hoping are going to be their position players for a while, that this was the right approach. The Rockies, when you're looking at things and when you're kind of evaluating it, I think that you're kind of seeing some of the veteran players that the Rockies plan to stick with. I mean, we saw a comment, and there was some talks before. Maybe this could change here in next season as well, but I don't think the Rockies have plans to move on from Rogers and McMahon. I think when you're looking at your two veteran guys, Chris Bryant's another option as well. That might be interesting. It depends on a team might be willing to take that. I don't necessarily know if Chris Bryant is ever going to be trade potential. And I'll say this again, and I'll put my foot down here, especially in this season, and depending if he plays again next year, which has been mentioned or hinted at. Charlie Blackmon wasn't going anywhere as well. So when you look at the prospect pipeline, when you look at the top prospects, when you look at the people that are going to come up for the Rockies soon, you think of position players, and you think of clearing playing time for the two prospects we mentioned in the first segment there, Montero and Tolia. So this approach of going pitcher heavy, I think honestly that's going to have to be the philosophy of the Rockies going forward when it comes to trades, because you can convince people to come play in Colorado if you're a position player. It might be hard to bring outfielders in when it comes to trying to play defense there and navigating that world, but the Rockies have an exciting center fielder, in Brenton Doyle. I mean, if Doyle can start swinging the bat on top of his defense, that you're kind of working in a great combo of your center fielder there. Right field, you have your multiple options there, and you can put Michael Tolia out there if you're like we saw last night, and if Chris Bryant returns, he'll play right field. I'm sorry, you could put someone else in left there. You could. I don't know how much they want to play Tolia on left. Can't remember Tolia. Where did Tolia play last night? But anyway, the position depth is fine for the Rockies. The pitching depth, on the other hand, was not fine for the Rockies, and to go through there. And to bring up and to build that depth, I think that was the right move. when we're asking the question, did they go too much into the I'm totally drawing a blank. Did they rely too much on going after pitchers? No. I think, especially as we've seen this year, especially after 2023, the Rockies can the Rockies could never really afford to be in the position they're in when it comes to pitching depth ever in their competitive options. I mean, when the Rockies, if the Rockies want to get back to competitive ball, they have to have consistent starting pitching depth and pitching depth in general, because they've been able to navigate some interesting points this season in the past of having good bullpen performances from some people, others not so much. But this, especially for the Rockies, you can never go after enough pitching. And so none of the players that I think have been traded from the Rockies this year were going to return. I don't necessarily, I can't remember too much about Hans' contract situation, but I believe it was a 1-year deal. And, maybe the Rockies missed out on trading Suter, Diaz, and Profar, but it's not going to be the end of the world if these guys finish up the season. I really, truly think, especially with Diaz's performance post-All-Star game and kind of overall big picture when you look at Elias Diaz, when you look at Profar this season, I just don't necessarily think they were going to get a ton. I don't think, though. I think Elias Diaz, I think the comments that we saw post All-Star game of Elias Diaz staying put was the right move. And I think having Elias Diaz is going to be better for the Rockies going to finish this season, just because veteran presence that the clubhouse loves, and he is a big factor there, gives the fans a good guy to cheer for as well. And I don't necessarily think the haul was going to be crazy. But again, if the Rockies are just getting prospects and getting guys and low ball players, why not try to be more aggressive there? But then you might have to be you would be looking at a situation that complicates your catching depth and what you want to do there. So I think that not trading Diaz is okay, because I think he can play a good vet role for the Rockies, especially when it comes to these pitchers. Tyler Kinley activated off the IL, by the way, today, so the Rockies bullpen is going to be getting a nice piece back there. And Austin Gomber's been good. Some of these other guys, Austin Gomber's been the stable point for the starters this year. And, Profar will go out there and get on base, hopefully still. I think the Profar, it'll be a one and done with Profar as the Rockies continue to navigate there. I don't think that he was generating a bunch of interest at the time of the deadline as well. So could have seen more. I think the one that I'm a little surprised is Brent Suter. But it sounds like, or at least I saw a couple tweets, that they might be more willing to see if Suter can hang around for a little bit. Because, again, that was a really nice, sneaky ad for the Rockies to bolster that bullpen. And we did get confirmation before recording. Patrick Saunders, I'm not missing out on any last-second tweets here from or trades from the Rockies. So, all in all, I'm not going to give a grade to the Rockies. I'm not going to necessarily sit there and announce that it was a total win. But here's the deal: they made moves, they planned for the future, and then on top of making moves, they made more moves than usual, which is nice to see the Rockies front office embrace that. It is nice to see the Rockies evaluating 2023 for what it is, a wash, and turn veterans into prospects, turn veterans into pitching depth. And that's what the Colorado Rockies were able to do this year at the trade deadline. Not as flashy as trading Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander and some of the other names that you saw thrown around here, but I legit do think the Los Angeles Rockies of Anaheim I think those were solid, low risk moves for the Angels to help bolster that team, and I'm rooting for them along the way. I'm certainly not opposed to cheering on the Angels, as they really are trying to be the team that bucks the trend and say, hey, you know what? If this is the swan song of Ohtani and Trout that we're trying to make a splash and go after it and get better here before we make the push. So, hey, I'm hoping that Cronin, Moose, and Grichuk help lead the way. But I'm more excited than the fact that the Rockies evaluated the deadline properly, added pitching depth, and traded the right players away. And of course, we can be a little more greedy and want more of them traded. But again, what the true value? That's the stuff you got to look for. So again, so instead of a grade or anything like that, the 2023 trade deadline for the Rockies was a success. Let's talk a little bit about the game last night and the fact that the Padres are cursed forever in Colorado. We'll do that coming up in segment number 3. Folks, this is the Locked On Rockies podcast for free and streaming on your favorite streaming service. All you got to do is search Locked On Rockies and be part of the show by dropping your comments into the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. When we go live, you can be part of the show there. Subscribing helps you know when we go live. Check us out on SiriusXM and the SiriusXM app. Colorado Rockies, weird, another classic weird game, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news as of recording this, tarp on the field again for the Rockies, which, woof, those delays, even for me, it was getting late here as a West Coast viewer. So what a wacky ball game for the Rockies, but good to see them handle the elements. I think the biggest takeaway from last night's ball game is this Rockies defense has legit potential and has had legit moments. Brenton Doyle, his impact is defensively. I mean, the bat is a bummer. But the Rockies don't win that game yesterday without the defense, the high level of defense that Brenton Doyle is playing. I mean, the bat's the biggest concern for him, but it's amazing to see what he's able and capable of doing in center field. It's so hard to play outfield at Coors Field, center field especially. So for him to be one of the most effective center fielders in the game since he's been consistently playing there, that's going to help the Rockies in those close ball games. How you win 3-2 ball games, how you hang on and eliminate teams from scoring in extra innings, how you stay in these games and back up your depleted pitching staff is good defense. And not only is Brenton Doyle doing it, but we're seeing the next layer of Rockies infield get more and more comfortable together. And with the return of Brendan Rodgers, the infield defense and double play turning potential of the Rockies should only increase. We've seen Harold Castro play good defense. Ezequiel Tovar, of course, is incredible on defense. And Ryan McMahon is there. We also saw Alaris Montero play good defense on first base, highlighting something that was one of his biggest struggles at the start of the season. The impact on the defensive side of the ball there, and playing at a much lower defensive impactful position is first base. Good move for Monty. So, I love beating the Padres. Absolutely love beating the Padres, and this is the kind of litmus test, I think, when you're San Diego. San Diego did make a couple of moves as well. They were more buyers than sellers, it appears, at the trade deadline, thinking that they can make a run here towards the wild card, I think. Manny Machado, man, we're talking about great defense. Holy cow, can that guy play a third base? Game was 4-3 yesterday. Sorry, it was 3-2 for the longest time. But it's the Rockies also got lucky yesterday, though, and that seems to happen when it comes to playing the Padres as well, because this is a team that wasn't necessarily stellar, but was able to capitalize. Didn't get a lot of hits yesterday against Seth Lugo, who was able to strike out 9 over 7 innings. But when you only get 5 hits, you score 4 runs, at least you're capitalizing and doing and making the most out of there, including a Ryan McMahon long ball there. He had a couple of RBI in that one. Alaris Montero with an RBI. So, the Rockies did enough to win that game, but the frustrations in San Diego have to just continue to mount, because that was a game the Padres were going to come back and steal. Everything was looking at, especially after they tied the ball game up late and then quickly jumped out to that loading the bases situation there in the top of the 10th. But great defense, heads-up defense, and kind of bonkers bonehead moves as well from the Padres leads to a nice Rockies win. Hey, I'd be remiss if we didn't mention the fact that Austin Gomber pitched well yet again. 6 innings, 6 hits, 2 earned, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts. saw another quality start for Austin Gomber, who has been the best starter for the Rockies this year. It hasn't been overall flashy, but he had an incredible month of July, and he has been something that you gotta give your props up to. You got to make sure you give a shout outs to the guy that has had a pretty tough tenure with the Rockies, at least with getting over here and the stories and things like that. And here's from Patrick Lyons. Austin Gomber is in line for another win following a solid outing. This was obviously before everything happened, but in line for another win following a solid outing at Coors Field against the Padres tonight. Blah, blah, blah. We already said that. He finishes the month of July with a 2.70 ERA, and that was over 30 innings pitched, giving up 9 earned runs. And the 2 walks that he gave up last night were the first walks he gave up all month long, and had 17 strikeouts over his 5 starts. Love to see that strikeout number get higher, of course, but that's a great month for Austin Gomber, who continues to highlight his abilities and the potential that he has there as well. So good to see from Gomber, and good to see the Rockies active at the trade deadline. Just another news and notes here for the Rockies. Unfortunately, Charlie Blackmon suffering a little bit of a setback, not going to be ready ready in time. Says that our hand is a little angry still, or grumpy, I think is how he described it still. So that's going to take a little bit longer. I don't think it's going to be a return for Charlie Blackmon this weekend like we thought with the delay in the rehab start in Albuquerque. So we'll keep an eye on that. And one last note about the trade deadline here, also from Patrick Lyons. Of the new pitching prospects acquired by Colorado at the trade deadline, there was one name mentioned most by Rockies GM Bill Schmidt and manager Bud Black. Right-handed pitcher Victor Vodnik there. So there you go. So if you're curious that who are the front office folk high on from the trades, looks like Vodnik is the one to beat. Folks, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Thank you so much for joining us here on the first day of August, talking trade deadline and all things Colorado Rockies baseball. Don't miss out on all the fun by subscribing to Locked On Rockies on YouTube and finding us on your favorite streaming service. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Now go check out Locked On Buffs, Locked On Broncos, Locked On Avalanche, and Locked On Nuggets for more Colorado sports coverage. And until next time, I'm Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.